One thing I'm going to talk about here is this whole gas stove nonsense. So I found this article here, and there's a bunch of different articles around. This one is from Forbes, but there's a bunch of different ones. There's right wing, there's left wing, whatever. Both sides of it, I've heard a bunch of different people talk about it, and for the most part, both the right and the left are just ridiculous. The right is extremely ridiculous, talking, oh, they're coming for your gas stoves. That's not happening. Even down here, I was reading you know, yes, it could be a ban, but they're trying to figure out ways to regulate gas stoves. So right here, drastically improving emissions or banning gas stoves entirely. And it says, I ought to keep the possibility of a ban in mind because it's a powerful tool in our belt and it's a real possibility here. Possibly, but it's banning gas stoves. If they do that, that usually just means that they're not going to put it in new construction, or somebody maybe eventually they'd stop production of the stove and you can't buy one and put it in a new house. But if your house is already outfitted for gas, you're going to have to change that. And for some people, both the right and the left have terrible takes. The right take is just, oh, they're coming for my gas stove and that's it, and I don't want them to keep it from somebody said you have to pry it from my cold dead hands or some stupid thing like that. And then the left is just kind of like, but the health concerns, the the climate and all of that stuff, while valid points, I just think that it's, you know, that's they're missing the big picture here. Now, right here, the commissioner, Rich Trumka Jr., whatever, said, thanks for your interest. To be clear, the CPSC isn't coming for anyone's gas stoves. Regulations apply to new products. So again, these are new products. So if anybody has a gas stove, for Americans who choose to switch from gas to electric, there is support available. Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which includes an $840 rebate. Now, the problem with this barely pays for an introductory like new electric or gas or induction gas stove. Now, inductions are different than a regular electric. They're not just the glass top electrics, which are terrible. They're anybody who cooks frequently. I cook all the time. I have a gas stove. I'm a little biased, but anybody that cooks frequently can tell you that a gas stove is so much better than cooking on an electric. It's faster, it's easier. The burners cool down immediately when you turn it off, and you can move pots and pans around. You can use almost any type of pot and pan. If you have a glass top surface, you have to have a specific type of pan. It has to be flat on the bottom or it's not going to work. And with these induction stoves, not only do they have to be flat on the bottom, they have to be the proper type. The way to tell is take a magnet, put it on the bottom of your pot. If the magnet doesn't stick, then it's not going to work on an induction stove. It'll work on an electric, a coil or glass top, but it's not going to work on an induction. So there's a hidden cost there. Not only do you have to rewire your entire house from gas to electric, that's putting in a 50 amp plug for your stove, which might already be there, but also running the 4 to 6 gauge wire that's required. That it's not cheap. Putting a 50 amp circuit in the circuit breaker, that's also not cheap. Hiring somebody to do all this, not cheap. That $840 is a drop in the bucket compared to what's probably going to end up being a $2,000 job. So you want to talk about people not having money for a $1,000 emergency. They're not going to be able to do anything like this to make the conversion. Again, this says new products. So eventually people won't be able to buy gas stoves over the period of time. So it's different than just like banning it and you have to get rid of it. That's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. But anybody who's never doesn't cook, that says, oh, electric gas, what's the difference? You obviously don't cook. You obviously don't. You probably eat fast food and you think it's great. Fine. If that's what you like, that's fine. But if you want to talk about health concerns and you're eating fast food, it's like, come on. I wouldn't exactly say that McDonald's is any safer than cooking on a gas stove. But then you have, but the left is just they're just ignoring the extra cost that's involved there, which is all the pots and pans, the wiring, the whole 9 yards to switch something over. Now, again, this applies to new products, not people who currently have gas stoves. If you have a gas stove already in your house and something happens and you want to replace it, you're not going to be able to. You're going to have to switch to electric, which is going to cost even more in the future down the line. And I've heard some people compare it to, oh, well, we've banned lead in gasoline and lead line refrigerators and Freon and in air conditioners and whatnot and cars and that sort of thing. Well, yeah, but that change didn't affect anybody's bottom line. You switch to you when you buy a new fridge and it's not lead lined, or you start using paint that doesn't have lead in it, or switch, there's no longer lead in the gasoline. That doesn't affect the average consumer. Having a gas stove is not only affecting the wallet of the average consumer, it's also affecting um, the way you cook and the way you're used to cooking, and switching out everything and completely having a different method. Induction stoves do sound pretty cool, but I mean, I've never cooked on one. I am interested, but again, that's an extra expense I'm not willing to fork out right now, and a lot of people aren't willing to. And even down the road, if something happens with my gas stove, it's like it's more than just replacing the gas stove. I got to do all of this other stuff. So it's just a point that I think both the right and the left just aren't they're not talking about it. The right's just concerned big government's coming to take over my stuff. And the left is just the health concerns, the environment, this and that. And if you're on the right or the left and you have brought up the financial concerns, then good for you. But a lot of people I just haven't. They just completely brushed over it and ignored it, which kind of shows a little bit from and these are political commentators online that have just kind of ignored it. And it kind of shows a little bit that, well, the reason why you haven't brought it up is because the financial concerns aren't a big deal to you. You probably $2,000 is chump change. So, but to the average person, they just end up with what's in their home, and it's in their apartment. They're not really actively choosing a place because of the stove that they have, obviously. But yeah, that's kind of my take. I think that the whole thing is obviously ridiculous. What is this? Who is this? Gary Palmer. Over 40 million Americans' households use gas stove. This type of power should never have been given to unelected bureaucrats, and it is time for it to end. Again, this is to be clear, CPSC isn't coming for anyone's gas stoves. Regulations apply to new products. Very clear. So people who are on the right who are outraged that they're going to take your gas stove, it's just calm down. It's ridiculous. People on the left, just be concerned about don't be too flippant about it. There is a financial concern there, a realistic one, even down the road. Even down the road, if somebody's forced to, say their gas stove, they do ban it, right? They ban new products. And then 5 years from now, somebody's gas stove dies and they have to get a new stove. All right, that's a huge expense. So if you do have a gas stove and it does get banned, start saving now, because you're going to need the money to be able to switch over. It's not something that the government's going to completely help you. Again, the $840 rebate is going to buy you an introductory basic electric or induction stove. And that's now. Who knows what it's going to be 5 years from now. So anyway, that's my take on that crap.